I'm J.G. Michael, and this is Parallax Views. What exactly is the abundance agenda? I mean, I know that Ezra Klein, and I think, who's the other author? Derek Thompson?
Derek Thompson, yeah, so that's a great question because people are using it in a variety of different ways. So I'll break down how people are using the term abundance and abundance agenda and then talk about how I'm using it. So on the one hand, Abundance is a book that was released in March by Derek Thompson and Ezra Klein. The Abundance Agenda is both an article by Derek Thompson from 2022, I think from The Atlantic, and it's also a set of policy positions being pushed by a number of different think tanks that I'm sure that we will go into. And beyond that, it's being used, the abundance agenda is being used as kind of a catch-all term for a new direction for the Democratic Party. And it's starting to get, I think, some traction, especially within centrist members of Congress. They just formed, I think right now they're forming an abundance caucus in Congress. I can't find out exactly who is in it yet. I'm not sure that that's public. This just came out yesterday. But, it's being promoted by a set of think tanks as a new direction for the Democratic Party. And these think tanks are, I think, hoping to function kind of like the Democratic Leadership Council, as in like, hey, we're gonna do a forceful takeover of Democrats with this sort of, this plan that we've laid out for a centrist future.
Okay, so, I mean, to me, this whole abundance agenda just screams, you know how there's that meme, fully automated luxury communism? I feel like This is just fully automated luxury neoliberalism. This is sort of like the third way neoliberalism 2.0, maybe.
I think that's 100% right. It is fully automated luxury neolibs. I think that a lot of the inspiration for the abundance agenda is coming from China. It's tech billionaires and also Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson and just people in the tech world asking, hey, why can't we be China? Why is China able to have a high-speed rail, these amazing EVs? Like, I think I saw that now with China, there's EVs that you don't even have to charge because they're solar powered through the windows, through solar glass, which is, it's like China has all this amazing stuff. And so basically this is like tech billionaires in particular, people whose life centers around innovation, asking like, hey, is there a way that we could be China without having a Marxist-Leninist party? And this is kind of the speculation about that,
If you were describing this whole abundance thing to someone who is not familiar with terms like neoliberalism, or they're just like my mom, she's not super political. She is a fan of your stand-up, though. How would you explain it to someone like my mom who is kind of like apolitical or not in the loop on everything?
Well, so that's such a good question. I'm going to see if I can answer this concisely. I probably would take a minute to explain what neoliberalism is. And I probably would explain it like, hey, so from the New Deal to the 70s, to Carter and Reagan, basically the thinking for the Democratic Party was that they had to be a very pro-worker party, and that they were going to focus on redistributing wealth to make sure that everybody had at least the basics of what they needed, like the New Deal and the Great Society. And they were also really, the relationship with labor unions was really important. But then with Carter, and then certainly way more with Reagan, the Democratic Party decided to become, and the Republican Party too at the same time, decided to really start focusing on deregulation, heavily influenced by the ideas of Milton Friedman, that, what we want to do is get the market as free as possible. And, then the wealth from the top, the additional wealth that is created will then trickle down to those at the bottom. And this has been kind of the economic thinking, the primary economic thinking for, decades at this point. And the abundance agenda is a way of justifying, like, how can we sort of keep going with that type of system where the wealth and power are concentrated at the top. We don't really do that much for workers. A lot of people got pretty sick of that idea over the past decade. That's why Bernie Sanders got so popular, and people like AOC are so popular, and drawing crowds of tens of thousands of people. They need kind of a new sheen on neoliberalism, and you can't just say, like, hey, we would like to do the same thing that Bill Clinton did, right? I mean, like, Bill Clinton, he was successful, but he was successful in the time that he was in. Like, bringing Bill Clinton's politics back, in 2025 or 2026 or 28, people have seen the consequences of those politics over time. Bill Clinton, for example, really, decimated America's welfare system, public housing. And it's like, maybe things that sounded good to people back then, we've seen, like, okay, the actual impact of that stuff now has been bad. So there needs to be a justification for, like, why we would keep going with just more deregulation, why we would not do something like Medicare for all, or build public housing so that everybody who can't afford a market rate unit has a place to live, and we don't have homelessness in the same way. And to me, the abundance agenda is like all that plus this kind of sci-fi element that basically we're not going to need redistribution in the same way, because what we will have instead is a future where there's just so much wealth that everybody will have enough. There won't be homelessness anymore because we'll have so much housing that housing will be really cheap. AI is going to generate a ton of wealth, and people are going to be able to relax because AI is doing most of the jobs, and somehow this wealth will be distributed equally. They can't I think that they can't say, like, hey, we want like Bill Clinton politics again. They have to add something to it.
They have to make it sexy, I guess, or sound sexy.
Yeah. And I think also, in addition to making it, just general neoliberalism sound sexy, there's a very specific tech element here, right? Tech billionaires.
Well, I was going to say, not to interrupt you, but that's where I wanted to go with you next, because it's very interesting to me how you start the article, which is you talk about how Ezra Klein literally says that his sort of vision of the future, he wants to be like the counterpart of a Mark Andreessen. Andreessen, as people know, is a Trump-supporting venture capitalist, and I think it's very telling that he wants to see himself as like the counterpart to Andreessen, like almost like the Andreessen for liberals, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I have been joking around calling him Lib Andreessen, but he is so basically something happens in 2024 where a bunch of tech billionaires, even tech billionaires who had opposed Trump in the past, all consolidated around Trump. And there's a few reasons why this happened. And a lot of them are rooted in the Biden administration. The FTC and the CFPB under Biden did do their job as regulators. And, I think Mark Andreessen, a company he was heavily invested in, got in trouble for, scamming, doing some kind of cryptocurrency scam. I don't remember the details of it, but he was really mad. Andreessen was really mad at the CFPB There was a lot of antitrust suits under Lina Khan. They also got rid of some things that the tech industry really loves, like non-compete agreements. What those are is basically like, a company will force you to sign a contract that you can't work for a competitor, which is tough. It means that people can't change jobs to something related in their fields. And, non-compete agreements were banned as a result of Lina Khan's efforts. And, there was just all this stuff that basically tech billionaires really didn't like. Maybe one of the things
that's what's really, not to interrupt you, but that's what's really interesting about, like, Ezra Klein's framing of, the left doesn't have enough of a vision of the future. Like, people like Mark Andreessen has a vision of the future, and we need to be more like Mark Andreessen, or I want to be more like Mark Andreessen, but for the liberals. And it's like, well, Lina Khan had a vision for the future, didn't she? I mean, but he completely, he just sort of says, no, I want to be with the tech billionaires. They're the future. Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, let's steelman Ezra Klein's position here, right?
Okay.
Because,
yeah.
So we get all these tech billionaires going to Trump, including like longtime conservatives like Peter Thiel and people that used to vote Democrat in the past and donate to Democrats in the past, like, I'm trying to, like Sam Altman, okay? Like he spoke out against Trump in the past. And, almost all the tech billionaires supported Trump this time, both because of the regulation under Biden and also because in terms of like the things that they want to do for AI, which is use an incredible amount of energy that doesn't even exist yet. Like it's better for them to have a president who does not even believe in climate change, right? So someone like Ezra Klein, who is really close to Silicon Valley, Derek Thompson, and even more, this billionaire named Dustin Moskowitz, who is the funding behind almost every abundance agenda initiative, him and this other billionaire, Patrick Collison. But Dustin Moskowitz, he is one of the co-founders of Facebook. And if you look at his Twitter, he's like, I'm a cool progressive billionaire. I don't like this sort of fascist thing that my fellow tech billionaires have going. And, I think this could be like an attempt, and it probably is an attempt from the remaining Democrats in Silicon Valley, especially Dustin Moskowitz, and those like Ezra Klein, who are they're not billionaires, but they're in this community and they're in this milieu, to say like, okay, what can we, like, what's our vision for Silicon Valley that could bring people back to the Democratic Party, get them away from Trump so that we don't have fascism. And I'm sure like there's something benevolent about the motivation, even though I don't personally like what they have done, because I don't think that the country should be run by Silicon Valley at all.
Well, that's the problem, right? Is it's almost like with this abundance agenda stuff, it's like, well, Silicon Valley will own both parties if the abundance agenda sort of succeeds.
That's exactly right. And I think that how that works, like to take it out of the realm of broad statements and into like, how is that going to function? Basically, like, this is a pitch. The abundance agenda is a pitch for tech billionaires to start donating to candidates who embrace abundance, which is like, I think for a little context, these abundance ideas, like way before Ezra Klein's book, like this is the language that has been discussed, for politics, especially around San Francisco and the Bay Area, since 2022 intensely, but even before that, right? Like they've been having this abundance conversation in the tech circles for a long time, and making the Democratic Party the party of abundance, if that works as they want it to, and it gets tech billionaires to come back, that means that they'll be giving money to Democratic politicians, that they will be funding these abundance-themed groups. Right now we have a bunch of them in the San Francisco Bay Area and some throughout the country as well. And they're almost all funded by Dustin Moskowitz's org, Open Philanthropy, which is an effective altruist org. We can maybe come back to effective altruism in a second. But, you know, like in San Francisco, the only place where like abundance politics is really a thing, how it played out is they gave, can I swear on this? An F ton of money to moderate, super tech-friendly Democrats to unseat progressives, and that has had disastrous consequences for the working class of San Francisco, and especially people without homes. You know, like they've all supported really brutal policing of people who are homeless, and you know they spent a lot of money and time trying to unseat, and they did successfully unseat a pro-tenant Democratic socialist. His name was Dean Preston from the Board of Supervisors.